Okay, everyone. Close your eyes and open your minds. Open yourself up to the spirit world.
All right, hello and welcome back to another Viveport developer interview. My guest today is Erik Odeldahl. He is the creative director at Fast Travel Games, and their game Wraith: The Oblivion Afterlife is now coming to Viveport Infinity. Erik, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you for having me here.
For people who aren't familiar, can you just tell them a little bit about what the game is?
Yes, so Wraith: The Oblivion Afterlife is a first-person horror exploration game built from the ground up for VR. And you play Ed Miller, a photographer from Los Angeles who dies for mysterious reasons. And you basically get to explore the Barclay Mansion, the place where he died, and to figure out how that happened, but also basically puzzle your way through the mansion's dark history as you try to find a way out.
It's set up almost like kind of like a murder mystery kind of thing, but I was kind of curious to ask about your influences. I mean, obviously what games influenced you, but I got real vibes of like some of the, because for context, for the listeners, the backdrop is Hollywood, like the movie industry, like that's a big part of the game. So I really got vibes of House on Haunted Hill.
Yeah.
I don't know if that movie specifically was an inspiration.
The old The Haunting, the old movie, Robert Wise movie from 1963 was a big influence. For me personally, a lot of the older horror movies from the 60s and the 70s. There's another one with George C. Scott called The Changeling, which I love. And these older stories, they have there's a different sense of horrors. It's a slower mood-based.
Yeah, more deliberate. It's not and then something's just constantly popping out at you.
It's horror that takes its time. We also didn't want to tell a story that felt like an old gothic horror story.
Old Victorian mansion, creepy English ghosts. I think the modernity of the setting really lends to the horror, because like, how could this be happening? This is clearly a modern house, modern kitchen. There are, it's a well-appointed Beverly Hills mansion. It's I think that if you're in a gothic English mansion or something, you're just sort of like, oh yeah, of course this place is haunted.
When we got the actors together and everybody recorded their lines, etc., I felt the whole place really started to come alive to me as well, even though they're all dead.
What's that old saying? Hell is other people.
Yeah, that was actually
it was Camus, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, so we actually had that in the in my first Style and Tone presentation. I had that quote.
It's a great. I forget the name of the play, but it's an amazing play.
Yeah, and I don't remember it either now. But I had that, and we basically said that relationships between people can be just as scary as the specter trailing you through a corridor.
The words I would use to describe this game the most are environmental storytelling. Maybe we can get into a little bit of that, because it seems that like the I don't know if enemies is the right word, but the force, they all seem to have a story to tell, and there is just this you almost feel bad for them because they all have like this tragic backstory. And again, without giving anything away, it isn't just like, oh, it's the shark from Jaws. It's like, well, obviously that's terrifying. It's more like, oh, like I kind of understand why this person's ghost is very, very upset, and they would lash out at anything that came even anywhere near them.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's a reason for them haunting Paul's apartment. There's a very, the Barclay Mansion has this strong pull and it's kind of the negative energy of Howard Barclay himself. he's been such a horrible person his whole life. So
Yeah.
I guess we can say that without getting too much.
No, yeah, it's
all the specters have a very clear and definite connection to Howard Barkley.
so Howard Barkley is kind of the like spider in the middle of the web. Not to give anything away, I think like you kind of pick up like at the very beginning of the game, the guys, something's not quite right with this guy. But everybody has this sort of tragic backstory and history associated with him.
Yeah. So, and even the Ed Miller, the character you play, but you get to find that out yourself. But all the specters, everybody who's died in the mansion or died, kind of because of things Barkley did. Those are the ones that are haunting the mansion now.
Which is it's difficult to get around some of them. I mean, I don't know if that was done on purpose, but man, like some of those encounters, I'm like hiding behind a corner. I'm like, all right, maybe he's gone. I look around. I'm like, nope.
No.
Like, how am I gonna get around this guy?
We needed them to stay threatening at all times. Several of them are kind of just wandering around the house, but they usually stay in their own. They have
like their own little area.
They're all very specifically designed, both in looks and backstory. Basically, with Howard Barkley as is kind of the focus for everything. Everybody has kind of been designed. Every character in the game has been designed with their relationship to Howard Barkley in mind.
I mean, if you love stories, this is a great one. If you're a big gamer, that's like, you're into stories. And I hear this all the time. It's like, like VR, like there's just not a ton of great stories.
I really like telling stories in VR because you have to approach it differently. And
yeah, tell us about that. What is kind of your approach?
I mean, our approach is there is always kind of a linear narrative, but it's also pretty loose. The linear narrative in all our games, I mean, starting from Apex Construct and Curious Tale of the Stolen Pets, which is a completely different type of experience.
Yes, it is.
And Budget Cuts too, and this one, Afterlife, they have a linear narrative, but it's very. I guess you could say that the linear narrative is very like plot based. It's like, what do I do next, and where does the story take me now, like location wise, etc. But as you progress through this linear narrative, you pick up a lot of surrounding information, and it could be scenes, it could be audio, it could just be like in Afterlife. There's a big room we call the atrium, and there's a big dead tree inside it, etc. And it's one of the first rooms you get to visit in the game, and you see like the remnants of a big, like a release party or a rap party actually when Howard Barkley had a party at his mansion.
Yeah, for the movie Time Storm, right?
There's a movie Time Storm, exactly, and you kind of. You get all these clues, but we don't necessarily always tell you exactly why we give you the clues. And I think letting the player connect the dots is like a really interesting way to do it. But also because you kind of spatially connect them to the rooms that you really are in VR.
And I wanted to ask in particular about the doors, because this is again, like usually like in VR, you touch a door and it just sort of explodes open. It's like, yeah. but with this, I like when I'm near like an enemy or something, I'm like, oh, very, very quiet. I like turn the handle very slowly and open the door incredibly slowly and like poke my head in and look around. How was that? Just something that was like, did that just emerge naturally, or did you guys sit around having meetings about this? Like, no, the doors should open like this. This is how people should interact with this.
I mean, doors and game development is like this never-ending. It's almost like an in-joke in game development.
Yeah, it's like a meme I've heard that like coding for doors is notoriously difficult for some reason.
But the thing is, I think this came out of play testing. I mean, the doors make noise, the vectors pick up noise, They hear you. But you can also, if you just, you peek in, you open it up a little, you peek in. No, the tall guy is there. I'm gonna close the door really, really quietly and try to take another way around, etc. It's part of the stealth mechanic. How to stay hidden, and I think it's also a really nice tactile feeling.
It is, yeah. It's very like it kind of makes me think of Resident Evil, the original Resident Evil with the door.
Yeah,
that was a brilliant load. They were like, we have so many loading screens. What do we do?
Yeah.
The door. That was a great solution by them. But I kind of wanted to ask about that because I was getting vibes of the mansion from Resident Evil 1. The Spencer Mansion. I don't know if that, because that's like the famous mansion from a video game.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was it inspiration at all.
Not necessarily that mansion. I think the Resident Evil games, it's very hard to do a horror game and not be inspired by Resident Evil.
Yeah, it's true.
But I think for me personally, I'd say that the police station in Resident Evil 2 and the way, specifically because I played the remake, of course,
which is fantastic.
Yeah, it's a fantastic game, and it's I guess you could say that Resident Evil inspired us in the way that it's you're in the same location, but you basically unlock more and more, and you open up shortcuts.
Yeah,
and you kind of, once again, you build this spatial image of, instinctively after a while where to go, and you learn to find your way around. It's about creating a believable space. And even the Barclay Mansion does take some liberties because it's a game, but really we want it to feel like a believable space. It should feel like a real house. And I think, what we, when we started, and a large portion of the team has played the Resident Evil games, of course, Silent Hill, all the classics.
All the classics.
But we said, let's be inspired by the right things there, and we from the get-go we said, this is not an action game. This is not a game where you can win by defeating the enemies or by shooting them, etc.
Yeah,
you need to win by outwitting them.
It's more like you ground the player in their surroundings, and you don't really do you do it a little bit, but like not too much. Like, you open a door and then you go back through that area, and then it just is a completely different thing. Like it's just like certain games will do this to like really mess with the perspective of the player. But I think I have the feeling you didn't do that because you didn't want to undermine the player's sense of space. If it's one thing, like you play a game like totally blanking, the one with it's about painting.
The Layers of Fear.
Layers of Fear. You play Layers of Fear, and you open a door and go into a room, and then you turn around to look for the door, and the door just has disappeared.
Yeah,
it's a neat trick, and it makes you feel, because the main character or the character you're playing as is losing his mind, so that makes sense in that sense. But I feel like you guys didn't mess with that too much because I think you want the player to go, okay, I don't have any weapons. I can't, the only thing that's going to save me is, okay, it's big brain time. I have to think, how do I move around this place? So pulling the rug out from under people by like, oh, it's a spooky haunted place and things can suddenly change instantly. Like, you didn't really do that. There are some things, but like nothing that extreme.
No, exactly. We and like you say, the reason here is we want the player to mentally map the.
Exactly.
I think what we said when we build any game at Fast Travel Games, I think we don't want to complicate things for players. We want everyone to feel welcome. I mean, the subject matter might not be welcoming like a horror game.
Yeah, some people.
Yeah, for some people. But the thing is, We want the experience to basically not be too complex, etc.
And there's one thing that I thought one thing I wanted to ask you about specifically is just, how do you make a player feel vulnerable even after they're already dead? I was thinking about, I was like, wait a minute, I'm a ghost. I'm literally dead. Like, like what are they going to do to me that's so bad? But I was like, you're just like, you're looking down a long, dark hallway, and you do this great thing with the lighting where it's pitch black at the very end. And you're just looking down this hallway. You're like, I have to go down there. Oh no. But it's things like that I think convey this sense of just dread. But you forget about the fact that if you look down at yourself, there's not much of you left. So how do you achieve that?
I think first of all, like you said, make sure the player doesn't have. Make sure that the view distance is actually a bit. It basically cuts off detail. The further away from you, it becomes harder to see. It's not super dark in the mansion in most places. At times it becomes really, really dark, but just making sure that the player can't see too far. Make sure that, and we play a lot with audio. There's a lot of creaking, and you hear footsteps, and you never really know if you're by yourself or if there's something stalking you. But also narratively, really try to hammer home the fact that even though you're dead and you are a wraith, there are worse things.
Yeah.
Even as a dead person, there's you can fall farther down. First thing we do is basically place the player in the world, make them believe in the world, make the world behave in a physically believable way around you. And the actual implementation of physics is different in all our games, but basically set the rules, make them clear for the player that this is where it happens, and then let them all our games are they're a bit slower in the beginning to give the player some time to look at the world and to listen to it and feel. And I think once you do that, then I guess if you establish the rules early, then everything else becomes easier. But also, you could say that all our games, maybe with the exception of Budget Cuts 2, is also about finding out what the story is and finding out why you are doing these things. You're doing, even in Curious Tale of the Stolen Pets, the narrative there is about you figure out what's happening as you play.
So you would say like an unfolding, like things need to. You need to give people a little peek. It's almost like when you're approaching a game, it's like a door that's just open just a little bit.
Yeah, I think so. And also iterating on stuff, letting people play it. Do they get what you're trying to do? And it's, since it's all, especially for games, people play games differently, and it's really hard to find the method. So, and also some games will probably, we've done this thing for Apex Construct and for Curious Tale and for Afterlife. We basically, very early on in the game, we show you the whole setting. In Apex, you just play a couple of minutes and then you see this large vista of what's happened to the world. In Curious Tale, you're in your bedroom, you're in your childhood bedroom. You can see all the things. There are clues there telling you all about the rest of the game. And in Afterlife, very, very early on in the game, you basically see the whole mansion. And this is where you'll play, and then you enter it, and that's where you are. So you can actually see the whole world, more or less, from the beginning. And it sets expectations, but it also creates a schematic, I guess, or something. Basically,
the sort of like the sort of thematic superstructure of anything, a movie, a book, a TV show. there needs to be, I think, this sense of structure, and you can do really interesting things and change the rules and play with that, and it's really fascinating, all the different things you can do. But I still think that there's like a core, like the base. I'm not a computer programmer or anything, but the root code, like the very absolute essential thing that makes everything complicated work. Because everything that is complicated that works, if you drill down deep enough, there's something very, very, very simple holding the whole thing up.
Yeah, that's true.
So I think with engaging with that is really key, and then growing from there and doing more complicated things. But I think that's a great note to end on. I mean, this has been a really fascinating conversation, and I can't thank you enough for taking the time to talk to us. Where can people get Wraith: The Oblivion Afterlife?
So you should check out Viveport, and where I'm not sure if it's released before this interview or after this interview.
It'll probably be after, because I'm going to have to spend a bunch of time editing. But by the time you are watching this or listening to it or whatever you're doing, you should be able to get access to the game through Viveport Infinity. But it's also available on if maybe they have some other way they want to play it. The bottom line is play it.
It's available on Oculus platforms and on Steam VR as well. So I think we like supporting VR in all the platforms.
So do we.
Yeah. So
you can use any headset with Viveport. Some people forget about that.
So I think I would also, for all the listeners, if you play the game and if you have opinions, things you want to get in contact, ping us. You can find us on fasttravelgames.com on our webpage and get in touch. And we have a Fast Travel Games Discord as well. And we'd love to hear what you think of the game. It's how we make our games better.
I mean, feedback makes the world go round. All right, you heard the man. If you play the game, get in touch. Let them know what you think. All right, Erik, thank you again so much. I really, really appreciate it.
Well, it's been a great conversation.
Yeah, it's been fantastic. And please let us know. Are you guys, before I let you go, are you guys working on anything else?
Yes, we are working on some really cool new projects. Several projects, actually, which I can't talk about yet. But
of course,
fairly soon.
Well, hopefully soon, and hopefully we can have another conversation when the time is right. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Fantastic. Well, thanks again, and you have a great rest of your day. I really appreciate it again.
Thank you.